In this presentation, we're going to introduce the characterization of a 16th century wall paint and a lime mortar in the facade of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. This research has been developed by Virginia Flores, Esteban Prieto, Letzai Ruiz, Gabriela Fernandez, and Luis-Prieto from the Pontificia Universidad Católica, Madre, Maestra, Universidad Nacional Pedro Urena, located in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, Asociación Cultural Hermanos de la Cal de Morón y Museo de Cal de Morón, Spain, and International Network for Traditional Building, Architecture and Urbanism. The structure of this presentation consists in an introduction, the objective, main facade of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, materials and methods, results, discussion, and conclusions. For the conservation of historical buildings, it is important to define each element with the purpose of preserving and protecting. There has been an interest in studying the pictorial coatings of the historic buildings, especially the paintings on the stone of artificial or anthropogenic origin, which were applied outside the building. This characterization facilitates obtaining and recording important information on the repairs that the building has undergone throughout its life, as well as providing data on how to carry out a proper maintenance for the building conservation. For these reasons, the characterization of elements is becoming increasingly important for the restoration of historic monuments. Therefore, the objective of this study is to characterize a 16th century wall paint and lime mortar on the facade of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, using polarized light microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, energy dispersive analysis, X-ray, and X-ray diffraction. The Basilica and Metropolitan Cathedral, Our Lady St. Mary of the Incarnation of Santo Domingo, was built in 1521 and 1540. It is the first cathedral in the New World, located in La Hispaniola Island. It was built during the reign of Emperor Charles V. It is a Gothic cathedral with a Highland Church or saloon plant, with 3 naves and 14 chapels between buttresses. The main facade is the most elaborate colonial facade in the Antilles. It is oriented to the west, following the astronomical criteria on which religious buildings of the time were created. It has a frontispiece framed by 2 pillars that act as abutments or buttresses, which width is reduced, while advancing towards the fronts, forming angles. These pillars are robust, have subdivision with decorated fields on their different sides. In the first body, there are niches that house the figure of the evangelist Saint Matthew, Saint Mark, Saint Luke, and Saint John, each with their corresponding canopies. In the second body, there are 2 niches for Saint Peter and Saint Paul. In the center, at the top of the facade, is the coat of arms of Emperor Charles V of Germany and I of Spain, and to the right is a representation of the Pillars of Hercules, and the left of the Golden Toison. The entrance has flattered arches or ox horns, decorated inside with carved coffers with floral motifs, and other objects such as chalices and candlesticks, amongst others. Above these arches and horizontally crossing the entire area, the entablature composed of the architrave, frieze, and cornice is placed, suspended over the pilasters in which the facade is framed. The triangle that finishes off the cover replaces the pediment. The frieze is completely carved with human figures like Cupid, putis, summorgraphic, grotesque, floral shapes, and objects such as fountains and flamer, and intertwined with branches in its center and in the medallion with a woman's face. In the laboratory, a series of studies were carried out. Polarized light microscopy, scanning electron microscopy, energy dispersive analysis, X-ray, and X-ray diffraction. To carry out this investigation, 2 microsamples were taken on October 29 of 2019 from the main facade of the Cathedral of Santo Domingo, one of paint and the other one of mortar. Regarding polarized light microscopy, in Figure A, an image of the cross-section of the paint microsample is shown. In Figure B, the image obtained with the optical microscope of the cross-section illuminated with UV light is presented. In the table, we can observe the different layers found in the paint microsamples, its color, width, pigments, weight, and observations. Meanwhile, in the case of the mortar sample, it has a light beige color and it is easily disintegrable. It has a crystal-like texture with a vast porosity. The scanning electron microscopy, energy dispersive analogy, X-ray. In Figure A, it shows the image obtained with a scanning electron microscope with a backscattered electron detector of the cross-section of the paint microsample, while the rest of the image shows the EDX spectrum obtained from the analysis carried out on each of the layers of the paint microsample. In the case of the X-ray diffraction, the results indicated that the mortar sample is mainly composed of calcite, with a small amount of gypsum. The base or plastered mortar is in contact with the stone, without the thin layer that plasters replaced as repairs, which are usually present. The hypothesis of an original mortar can be made. Its calcite composition indicates that the aggregate used is calcareous. Its formula is approximately 1 limestone, 3 calcareous aggregates. This data is difficult to determine because it has impalpable calcareous, and the carbonation is perfect. Parts of the lime paste turned into limestone, lime used plus lime paste, due to the presence of microcrystals. On the other hand, it does not react with phenolphthalein. This implies that carbonation is perfect. The presence of gypsum can be due to several factors: contamination by CO2 and sulfur alters of the lime, transforming it into plaster. In any case, the alteration is very low by comparing samples from other buildings. The natural presence of gypsum in limestone is common. A small addition, current in places of strong wind, to retain moisture and aid carbonation. With this proportion of 1%, it would be sufficient and safe. The porosity that presents can be due to various factors. The original stone. There are limestones and mortars that can be very porous or less porous depending on the original of the stone and the construction needs. A porous mortar evaporates water better and is usually more elastic, or the gradual dissolution of the softer parts of the mortar by the action of the atmospheric agents, rain. The colors used are natural earth, washed and grounded, ochre, reddish and orange, probably local minerals. In this case, the presence of gesso is not due to the presence of lime, that does not contain, but rather it is an addition. Note that there is not a low proportion, nor a very low proportion, that is, the presence is greater. No organic binder has been found. The presence of plaster may be due to the following hypotheses. Adulteration, historically very common. Use it as an aesthetic factor to mute the color, unlikely given that they have used the fresco technique or natural pollution, but more comparative studies are needed for other places. The technique used is fresco painting, probably mixing the pigments with lime water and painted or aged with shadow earth and bone. A very low proportion is sufficient in these colors. In conclusion, 4 layers were identified in this research. The most superficial layer is ochre dark brown, followed by 2 more layers, one reddish and the other orange. The last one is a beige layer that corresponds to the base mortar, which is direct contact with the stone, without the thin layer that is usually presented in render, placed as a repair, which is why we believe to be the original mortar. The colored layers are natural earth, washed and ground. They are probably local earth, which could be located to produce the colors in the future restoration. Gypsum is present in the paintings, but in the case of the gypsum is not due to the presence of lime, which does not contain, but it is an additive, not an organic binder that has been found. The mortar has a microcrystalline texture. with abundant porosity due to the lime used, which came from the Carolina limestone. The presence of 1% gypsum may be due to the CO2 and sulfur contamination, which alters the lime transformation into gypsum. The mortar is the original and composed of fat lime and calcareous sand, painted and patinated al fresco. Of porous origin and deteriorated by atmospheric agents, it is assumed that it was made as a protector of natural stone, with a high aesthetic character. The original mortar of fatty lime and calcareous sand, painted and patinated in fresco, porous in origin, and deteriorated by atmospheric agents, it was probably made to protect the natural stone with a high aesthetic character. Thank you very much.